In the morning hours of September 9, 1990, Samuel K. Doe paid an infamous visit to the headquarters of the Economic Community of West African States Monitoring Group, ECOMOG, in the Freeport area of Monrovia, the capital of Liberia. What happened next was a gruesome assassination that will shock the entire world. In this video, I revisit the last 24 hours of Sergeant K. Doe, President of Liberia, who was tortured and executed by rebel forces on the 9th of September 1990. I will also re-examine the circumstances surrounding Sergeant Doe's capture. Welcome to this edition of Hispo Media. My name is Gabriel Adidia, and I encourage you to take a moment to like this video and please subscribe to Hispo Media if you have not done so already. Thank you. For us to fully understand the whole scenario, let us begin from the headquarters of ECOMOG, where President Samuel Doe was captured. ECOMOG was established at a meeting of the Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS) Standing Mediation Committee held in Banjul, the Gambia, on August 6 to 7, 1990. Their simple objective, among other things, was to intervene in the civil war that has ravaged Liberia over the last 8 months. Following the establishment of this body, troops were contributed from different member countries under the command of General Arnold Quinoo of the Ghanaian contingent. Major General Iweze of the Nigerian contingent was then appointed Chief of Staff of the West African Peace Monitoring Group. Consequently, ECOMOG troops were deployed to the Freeport area in Monrovia, the capital of Liberia. Meanwhile, at this time, this area was under the command of rebel leader General Prince Johnson of the Independent National Patriotic Front of Liberia (INPFL), a breakaway faction of Charles Taylor's NPFL. However, as ECOMOG forces arrived in Liberia, available information suggested that a standing ceasefire between Prince Johnson, Charles Taylor, and Sergeant Samuel Doe was in effect. But was that the case? We will find out shortly. Well, something interesting happened. To solidify the supposed ceasefire, Major General Iweze initiated a peace move between Prince Johnson and President Samuel Doe. In an interview, General Iweze said, and I quote, "I initiated a peace move between Prince Johnson and President Doe, requiring each one of them to send a representative in form of liaison officers to open up a communication channel between the two forces. The mediator then was Guinean Deputy Force Commander Lamin Mangasuba." Iweze continued, "But while the peace move was still on course, Johnson formed a habit of visiting the headquarters regularly, pretending to be friendly. This frequent visit by General Johnson and his rebel forces was beginning to infuriate the Chief of Staff, General Iweze. In the morning of September 9, 1990, Johnson showed up again at the ECOMOG headquarters with his armed troops, but was confronted by Iweze. And Iweze had this to say, quote, "I didn't like the way he was frequenting the headquarters, and I summoned him one day and warned him against his coming to the headquarters with his men fully armed to the teeth. I insisted that he must leave his arms at the headquarters main gate before attempting to gain entrance into the premises. However, he pretended to have heard me and then climbed upstairs to see the force commander in his office. As soon as he has left, I climbed upstairs too to brief the commander of what transpired between myself and Prince Johnson. As Iweze got to the commander's office, what he discovered was shocking. But I will come back to that shortly. Meanwhile, as the drama between Iweze, Quinoo, and Johnson was unfolding at ECOMOG headquarters, Samuel Doe was preparing an unannounced visit. Back in the government house, Samuel Doe was making finishing touches to his plan to visit the Bushrock Island, a stronghold of Johnson and the official headquarters of ECOMOG. However, when officers in the Special Security Detail got to know that Doe had decided to go to the Freeport area of Monrovia, they protested against the move. The commander of the motorcade, Spartacus Smith, ordered his men to disconnect the batteries of all the vehicles in the motorcade in protest, fearing that death would be their end. These incidents at the government house could not deter Doe from embarking on the journey. Instead, when Doe got wind of what had unfolded, he ordered Smith under threat of execution to reconnect the batteries. And the batteries were all reconnected. Why Doe chose to visit the ECOMOG headquarters was not clear to anyone, but according to a former SSS officer in his security detail, he said, quote, "Except for a few close relatives and advisors, not many others knew of his intent to visit the Freeport. For him, it was a clear giveaway sign of desperation." However, while testifying at the Liberian Truth and Reconciliation Committee in Monrovia, Officer Jeff Nure said, Samuel Doe apparently went there to go into exile in Nigeria. Jeff was among the few officers who survived Johnson's onslaught against Doe and his forces. Meanwhile, at the ECOMOG headquarters, as Iweze met with the force commander, he was informed to his greatest surprise that Johnson was not happy with his orders. Consequently, the force commander, General Quinoo, countered General Iweze's directive that Johnson and his forces should be disarmed at the entrance gate of the peacekeeping force headquarters. Hardly had the commander and the chief of staff finished their discussion when they heard a siren advancing towards the headquarters. Lo and behold, it was President Samuel Doe approaching the ECOMOG headquarters. According to Jeff Nure at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, when they entered the Freeport, there was an unusual air of silence, at which time he sensed something conspiratorial. He said, quote, "In the port as we entered, you could even hear the sound of a pin if you dropped it." Secondly, as Samuel Doe's convoy got to the main gate of the Freeport of Monrovia, they were stopped and searched and finally disarmed. In contrast with the commander's earlier stance, ECOMOG soldiers claimed that weapons were not allowed to enter the port. Usually, the force chief of staff was duty-bound to receive the guest and usher him to the office of the force commander. But again, this protocol was breached. The commander, General Arnold Quinoo, rushed down to receive Samuel Doe and was followed by the chief of staff, General Iweze. The Liberian president was then ushered to the commander's office, while the cabinet members in his convoy were taken to the office of the deputy commander. At the force commandant's office, the president berated the commander, complaining that he desired to be paid a homage by the troops as the president of Liberia, no matter the situation. But as the commander was trying to apologize to him, he heard another siren advancing towards the headquarters again. And before they knew what was happening, it was Prince Johnson and his men who had returned to the headquarters. General Cyril Iweze explained what happened next. He said, "Sensing danger, I advised that the commandant should remain with the president in his office while I went downstairs to confront Prince Johnson to leave the headquarters or remain outside the headquarters with his armed boys. But by the time I got downstairs, Prince Johnson had already gained access into the headquarters and was giving me options that I must tell Sergeant Doe to join the Ghanaian ship and leave Liberia immediately for peace to return to the country. I cautioned him and insisted that it was not for him to tell us what to do with the president. I commanded him to leave the headquarters immediately with his troops. As he was attempting to go out, we started hearing continuous gunfire. That was Prince Johnson's men killing the security operatives that came with Sergeant Doe." So, what happened? It was alleged that one of the security guys asked to the hearing of Prince Johnson's troops that what are these rebels doing here? In response, one of Prince Johnson's men challenged him, and before we knew what was happening, he opened fire on them, killing all the security operatives. However, while the firing was going on, Iweze commanded Johnson to leave the headquarters immediately. In the confusion and chaos that followed the exchange of gunfire, Samuel Doe was captured. But before we get to that, let me briefly return to General Quinoo's office. In the meantime, Major General Cyril Iweze went back to Quinoo's office, but the commander was nowhere to be found. He had escaped to the ship, leaving only Samuel Doe in his office. At that point, General Iweze was as confused as he was threatened. He told President Doe, quote, "Look, discretion is a better part of valor. Let me take you to the ship so that you remain there until this raging fire is quenched." But President Doe turned down this appeal and rather demanded for troops to escort him back to the executive mansion. This option was dangerous as an ambush may have been set for him already and would have risked the lives of the soldiers. While they were talking, one of Prince Johnson's boys by name Rambo traced him to the commander's office where he spotted Sergeant Doe. Rambo started shouting, "He is inside the office! He is inside the office!" This shout attracted Prince Johnson, who returned to the commandant's office immediately. But he was briefly confronted by Iweze again, who refused to allow him access to Doe. This is what Iweze had to say. "I quickly shut the door and stood behind it and ordered Prince Johnson's boy, Rambo, to leave the place. There and then, he opened fire around me to scare me away, but I stood my ground as I continued to command both Johnson and his boy to leave the place. At a point, something occurred to me. I started asking myself who I was protecting, whether it was Sergeant Doe, who had shed a lot of blood and who in the early hours of that fateful day slaughtered many Liberians, whether he was worth dying for." Iweze continued, "That was how I left him at the mercy of Prince Johnson and his men. Johnson went into the office and fired at his two legs. He advanced to the deputy commandant's office and also killed all the members of Doe's cabinet who came with him to the headquarters. Later, he dragged the wounded Doe outside the place and began to jubilate that he had captured the president." However, at the Liberian Truth and Reconciliation Committee, T0rtured explained that the president handed a list containing names to General Quinoo, who complained that it was containing a huge number of people that could not be evacuated. It was while in conversation with General Quinoo on the staircase that General Prince Johnson arrived. He immediately held President Doe by the back of his shirt and took him away, forcibly in the presence of the general, who turned his back and walked from the scene into his office. "I believe this was orchestrated," he concluded. Johnson immediately dragged Samuel Doe into his car and disappeared to his base, leaving so many unalived bodies behind. This was the beginning of a brutal torture that was televised all over the world. Meanwhile, when President Samuel Doe got to Johnson's base, he was apparently being interrogated on the whereabouts of millions of dollars worth of gold, which the rebels said disappeared during the rule of Samuel Doe. Liberia has been torn apart by 9 months of civil war at this time. Seemingly crushed and terrified, Samuel Doe looked imploringly towards his captors as interrogation took place. Meanwhile, to prove that he was not protected by black magic, Johnson ordered his ears to be severed. While issuing out torture orders, Johnson was sipping from a can of beer. The footage revealed Doe's legs in shackles and a strange thing wrapped around his glands. At the end of the video, Doe was forced to stand and had part of his fingers and toes severed. Attempt was also made to remove his middle finger. After 12 hours of gruesome torture at the hands of Johnson, Doe was finally murdered. His body was left naked on the street of Monrovia with his head shaved from cigarette burns. Doe's body was later exhumed and reburied. Major General Cyril Iweze also believed a deal may have been struck with people in high places. He wondered how Prince Johnson got to know that Samuel Doe was visiting the headquarters. He said, "Immediately after Johnson had met and discussed with the commander, General Arnold Quinoo, a deal must have been struck between them." This corroborated the position of T0rtured, which we have alluded to earlier. So, do you think there was a conspiracy to arrest Samuel Doe? Let me know in the comment section. Samuel Canyon Doe was born on May 6, probably in the year 1951. He was born in Tozon, a small town in Grand Gede County in the southeastern part of Liberia. His parents were poor and uneducated, and he belonged to the Crown tribe. Samuel Doe had only accomplished primary education when he became a career soldier, presumably because of lack of job opportunities. In October 1979, he was promoted to the rank of Master Sergeant in the Liberian Army. Samuel Doe was in his 4th high school grade and attending 9 school classes when he and a group of soldiers seized power, assassinated President William Tolbert Jr. and established military rule over the country. It was April 12, 1980. Before the end of the month, the entire cabinet had been put on trial and sentenced to death. With no right to legal defense and no right to appeal the verdict, 13 of them were executed on the 22nd of April 1980. On April 12, 1981, that is on the 1st anniversary of the coup, Samuel Doe announced the creation of a 25-member constitutional commission under the leadership of a renowned Liberian, Dr. Amos Sawyer. He believed the new constitution should pave the way for a genuine democracy in the country. However, within the 4 years that followed, everything changed. Samuel Doe started enjoying the thirst of power, and as time wore on, he became increasingly repressive. While his human rights records were deteriorating in Liberia, Samuel Doe continued to receive United States aid and was even invited to the White House. He won re-election in 1985 with nearly 51% in a heavily disputed poll. He contested under the umbrella of his newly formed party, the National Democratic Party of Liberia, NDPL. Samuel Doe was sworn in as Liberian 21st President and the first President of the Second Republic on January 6, 1986. Thereafter, the political climate in the country deteriorated further. Doe's repressive military dictatorship and his transformation from a shy Master Sergeant into a repressive Commander-in-Chief earned him a place next to the likes of Idi Amin of Uganda and Jean Bertel Bokassa of the Central African Republic. We have covered the last 24 hours of Thomas Sankara and the last 24 hours of General Sani Abacha as displayed in the videos here. Please check any of them out if you can, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Hispo Media, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.